Hi. Sorry, I'm just adjusting my lights. There we go. Welcome back. This is so great. Welcome to my living room. Today is going to be a little bit different because I'm going to share with you about my spiritual journey. And I want to talk about how did I get to this place where I'm a practicing medium? I'm a coach and mentor. That will never change. But what went on in my life that this is a huge, wonderful spiritual journey for me right now. So I just want to share with you. And today I'm using YouTube directly in the previous videos, and I hope you visit them. If you're new here, I hope you go watch the other videos because they're full of really good information and education and help for personal growth. And I talk about childhood trauma, talk about inner child, emotional intelligence and social intelligence and codependency and relationships. And what you'll find is all those things are connected. It's not just one issue here, one issue there. It's all connected. So I hope you do watch that and find the video where it says start here, because that's where you want to start and then move forward. So, okay, I'll leave it at that. So, all right. First of all, I am very much aware that I may lose friends when I share this. It can happen. I don't know. I hope not, but it's my truth, and it's truth, and I want to share it with you. So, here's another reason why. Because I have a feeling that someday, somehow, whoever watches this recording or the recording of this live, and that they too have been touched by what I say the spirit world, and they don't know what to do. They don't know. They don't understand it. This should help them. So this is another reason why I want to share my story. First of all, if you watched previous videos, especially that first one I just mentioned, you know that I grew up in a Catholic household. So from the beginning, I had some sort of understanding of God or a higher power. And I think that's always good. And I went to Catholic school. I went to Catholic high school for part of the time and then finished off in a public school. And for me, I mean, Catholicism is what it is. It's very full of dogma and doctrine and stuff that isn't necessary, in my opinion. And anyway, so I outgrew that, but I never outgrew my faith in God or even my understanding of Jesus. And so as a young adult, I became a Christian, a born again Christian, as they say. I wasn't super conservative, right? Never was that. Still don't agree with that, but it was a constant in my life, and it was good. And my children grew up going to church, and we had good friends, and it was good. I mean, it wasn't a bad thing, except that I was always drawn to kind of, the phrase is paranormal. I don't think it's para. I think it's very normal, but you would call it paranormal. And curious about mediums and curious about the other side and connecting. So even though I knew in the church I was going to, the religion that it was against mediumship, because mostly out of ignorance, and fear and funny things that they believed about it. But it didn't stop me from being curious. I was very drawn to it, and I wanted to know more. Just like there are a lot of things in life that I'm very curious about and I like to learn more of. I'm always learning, always learning. So that was that. And then church got really weird and different and strange, and I had gone through a very difficult divorce, very painful. Lost a lot of friends because of it. They were fair weather friends. They weren't true friends. And they didn't even understand what was going on or the story behind the divorce or anything. So they showed their true colors. They just dropped off. And had to find a new way for myself and my life and my children. They were a little older, but still it was hard. A lot of my education came around that time. I was finishing school, and I moved from LA to Colorado and finished the university there and got a degree in one aspect of psychology and family violence and criminology and profiling and all that fun stuff, thinking maybe I would go that direction, but you have to have harder metal. I'm not like that. I couldn't. It was too distressing, and being involved in a lot of horrible information and crime scenes. It just wasn't me. I couldn't do it. And hats off to people who do. They go through a lot and they have to deal with a lot, and hats off to them. Anyway, so I decided that wasn't going to be it. And I knew by then I was like, I also don't want to be a therapist, but I knew I could be of help and service in some way. And so it became, even though I was mentoring and coaching all along, this gave me more a solid foundation because of my education, because of my experiences, and my seeking spiritual growth in all different ways. So let me go back to the beginning, just really quick. When I was really young, there was a woman who helped my mother. My mother had 8 children. And so my grandmother provided once a week, this woman would help. And I grew up with her. Her name was Carrie, and she was a wonderful lady. And she helped my mom with different chores and ironing and whatever needed to be done, or a little bit of babysitting. And so we all grew up. She was just a big part of our family. She was a wonderful person. And she used to tell my mother, I found this out when I was an adult. I had no idea, but she used to tell my mother, she goes, that one, Mary Alice, she sees angels. She sees angels. And she told my mother that a few times. Now, I don't know what I was doing or where I was looking or what was happening that she thought that, but she really thought that and believed it and told my mother. So there's that kind of beginning right there where somebody saw something in me that, I was so young, I wasn't aware. And here's a side note. I want to share something with you because it does connect here, but it's a little side story. Carrie, she was such a wonderful woman. She was a woman of faith, and she was so kind and loving, and she loved us. She was just a big part of our family. And she was a Black woman, and this was in early 60s-ish, into, I'm trying to think, probably late 60s. Is that right? Early 70s. She was with our family. Anyway, so she meant a lot to us. And my mother would always, she'd fix us our lunch, and then she'd fix Carrie lunch, and she'd serve it in the dining room, and she'd sit down in the dining room with Carrie, and they would chat and have good talks. And then, after 45 minutes or whatever, an hour, then they both go on their way. My mom would clean up, and my mom got some flack from people for doing that. My mom actually got flack for that. Like, you don't sit with the help. You don't feed the help. You don't. My mother's like, what are you talking about? This was a spiritual lesson for me too, watching my mom. To me, it was just normal. My mom loved everybody. She didn't have any kind of, there was nobody that she would ever not talk to or give her time to or help. That was just who she was. And I learned a lot from her that way growing up. And that was a real life lesson. Because you have to remember back then in the 60s, there was still so much racial tension and divide and racism. And so it wasn't acceptable for my mom to do something like that. But she was like, I don't care what you think. I love this woman. She's a big part of our life and she helps me out and I will serve her and I will make her lunch if I want to. I just love that. I thought that was cool. Okay, anyway, back to and the reason I brought that up is because it was a spiritual lesson for me. At the time I didn't recognize it. At the time it was what it was and that was normal. But I look back on that and realize that was amazing. Okay, so now after I divorced, moved to Colorado and tried to fit in. I mean, I went to a church that was big and famous and loud and curious, and my son had worked there. He doesn't anymore, and he worked there, but I could not make friends. And it's not like I'm not friendly. And it's not like I wouldn't invite people over or have, dinner gatherings and whatnot, even in the neighborhood. But there comes a time when you're a certain age, it's kind of weird. It's just hard to make new friends because everybody's established and they have their family and friends. And it's not like nobody's nice. It was a little bit difficult. But not like I didn't try and I kept trying. After a while, I just stopped going to church. I just thought it was so hypocritical, and I was tired of the hypocrisy of Christianity, to me, in my experience. And now, don't get me wrong, I didn't lose faith in my higher power, in the creative force of life, in God, in spirit, whatever name you want to give it. Didn't. I was just tired of the humanness and the pettiness and the hypocrisy. I was just done. I was done. And I remember having kind of a spiritual crisis. I do. It was really hard. I remember breaking down in tears. And I remember just praying. I was like, if you're there, I don't know who you are anymore. I don't know what you are. I don't know what I'm doing on this planet. I don't know what's going on. But if you're real, please show me you. I'm giving up everything I ever thought or knew or believed about you, talking to God. And I did. I'm like, forget it. I'm starting new. And within that week, I can't even tell you what happened. Within that week, oh my gosh, my exposure to different people and books and conversations and people just coming into my life and my sphere of influence that never were before. I can't explain how or why, but I just took it as, wow, this is amazing. And I learned so much and met neat people and learned a lot and read Eckhart Tolle's books and just met different people, even listening to different people speaking on the internet and things like that. So it opened up my eyes and my heart and my spirit to a much bigger understanding, at least at that time, as much as it could be, of my life, of spirit, of God. Or when I say God, I think you know what I mean. I think God it's so personified. It's not big. There are no words to explain the creative force of life. There's just none that we can come up with. Anyway, so that put me on a new journey of investigating and learning and growing, and I loved it. That put me on the continuation and even bigger aspect of personal growth, the people I've met and come across, like Jack Canfield, John Assaraf, Les Brown, and later Brendan Burchard, and I mean, all these different people, Mary Morrissey, I was able to learn from them, which was just magnificent for me at that time in my life. So in 2004, that's when I moved to Colorado. And I had a house that I was finishing. I was kind of changing it around and doing some remodeling and whatnot. And it was a solace for me. And it was good for me. And it was quiet. And I could think a lot. I could grow. I could learn. And that was important to me. Things got even more interesting because I was having that house recarpeted. And a gentleman came over who was in charge of the workers, like bringing in the carpet and telling them which rooms to do and whatnot. And we just wound up talking. You know how you connect with people? You just start talking. And it was that kind of conversation. He was a very pleasant man. And he said, I have something for you. He goes, I don't think I know. I just don't know why I know this, but I know you'll be interested. I said, okay. So the next day or two, he came by. He wanted to see how everything was going, and it was done, and it looked good, and he wanted to check everything. And he said, I have something for you. And he gave me a book, and he gave me a cassette tape. We still kind of use cassette tapes back then. And it was fascinating. It was about spiritual matters. It was about a particular person who could channel and her story. And I was a little like, well, I don't know about this. This kind of freaks me out. I don't know. And I look back and go, why was I freaked out about that? Oh, because I was told to be freaked out about it. I was told to be scared of these things. So instead, I read and I listened to this tape and I thought, wow, this is really fascinating. This is because it kept piquing my interest in spiritual matters beyond what I was told to believe all my life. So I wanted God to tell me what to know. And this was opening up. So I thought that was so interesting. And I kept it to myself, and it just was something in my intellectual, spiritual arsenal, I guess you could say, that I had to go back to and listen to or read. And I thought that was amazing. Now, I moved from that house into another house in Colorado. And the house I moved into was brand spanking new. It was a new community. And I was on an acre of land. And it was the home of my dreams, and thought I would live there forever. Obviously, I'm not there now. But it was a very special move. And there's a whole story behind that I'm not going to go into now. But you talk about law of attraction, which I didn't even know what it was back then, but my goodness, I'll tell that story someday because it's pretty amazing how I even got into this house. It still gives me chills. But anyway, so I moved into this house and I'm getting settled, and one part of the house had a hallway that led to the master bedroom, and then down the hallway was another bedroom and then an office. And then the other side had another bedroom, and the other side of the house. So anyway, I'm not going to describe the house, but so I had set up my office and I put in an older TV in there. It had a DVD player in there, and I thought, this is great. So when I had small grandchildren at the time, I thought they can come and visit, and I could put in a Disney movie or something for them in this DVD player. And because I never sat and watched that TV, I was not in that room a whole lot, and I had a big screen in the other room, in the big great room. So I didn't watch that one. And I was dating at the time. I was with somebody for a couple of years by then. And he came over. I remember, I'm trying to get it right because I'm trying to remember how this all came down. I knew about, I don't even know how long, maybe within the first year I lived there. The TV in the office would go on by itself. Just go on by itself. by itself. The remote was across the room, and half the time the remote battery was dead anyway. But it was across the room on the table, and that TV would go on by itself. And I remember the first time it happened, and I'm like, oh, maybe I forgot to turn it off. My grandchildren were there earlier and thought maybe they were playing with the TV or something. So I just tossed it up like that. Not a big deal. Turned it off. The next day, the TV was on again. Just went on by itself. This time I was in the kitchen. I'm like, that is weird. This is weird. So I go down the hallway, and the remote's on the table across the room, and the TV's on, and there's no one else in the house. I'm like, okay, this is interesting. I wasn't afraid, but I started thinking someone's trying to get my attention. Someone from the other side is trying to get my attention. I knew enough to know that, and I wasn't afraid. So it didn't spook me out. I wasn't scared or anything. I just had this feeling someone's trying to get my attention. I turned the TV off and went about my business and made lunch and whatever. The next day, my then boyfriend came over. I hate to say boyfriend. He's a man. I don't know what you call, I don't know. Anyway, the guy I was dating came over. He was going to help me with yard work because he loved it, and I was on an acre, and it's a lot of work to do. So we were going to spend part of the day doing that, like mowing the lawn and pruning and trimming and stuff like that. So we go outside. We're doing stuff. We decide to come in. I thought, let's get some lunch and some water, and we come inside, and the TV's on. I'm laughing because I told him this was happening. He didn't believe me. And I go, the TV's on. And he's like, what? He was freaking out. So I go back there, I shut it off, and I sit down, and I'm like, who's here? What am I supposed to know? I really felt like it was for a reason. In my heart, I just felt like there's a reason for this. But the problem was I was in my head about it. I was in my head thinking about it. And just hold that thought for a minute, because you'll understand later when I talk about that. I was just in my head about who's here and how would I know and how can I find out and what is it you want? That kind of thing. I didn't feel any mischievous or meanness or anything. I wasn't afraid. But I couldn't figure out what to do. Okay, so this happened a few more times. And this freaked my boyfriend out. He goes, I'm checking. He used to be an electrician. He goes, I'm going to check the outlet. I'm going to check the TV. He had his tools. He checked stuff. He goes, everything's fine. And I go, I know. He's like, I can't deal with this. So he said, can we just unplug the TV? So we unplug it. And then obviously that didn't happen anymore. And I only plugged it in when the kids were. See, it didn't bother me. I wasn't bothered by it. So from there, it went to lights flickering. And I used to think, oh, the bulb is weird or something's wrong with the lamp or something. And then, long story short, over time, it's like, no, that's not the case. And I knew that was still somebody trying to get my attention. From Colorado, I moved to Oregon. I had some friends in Oregon. I had 2 of my children lived here. And so, one night I went to dinner. My friend had a beautiful dinner party, and there were like 20 people or so there. So we all sit down, and where I'm sitting, right across from me, sideways, is the living room lamp. So I'm sitting there, and her living room lamp starts flickering. And people are saying, oh, you need a new bulb, or I can fix it, or something like that. And we're like, oh, and she's like, oh, we'll do it later. Don't worry about it. And in my head, I'm like, I know somebody's here. And I knew somebody was here because I could feel a woman. I could feel she was very sad. And I didn't know what to do with it. But I will say this, I knew not to speak up about it. I knew not to talk about that in the presence of anybody. That's just not ethical. It's not right. And I wouldn't even know what to say anyway. So I didn't say anything, but I was very aware of it and communicated to this woman, there's nothing I could do right now. The light stopped flickering. And then I started just talking and mingling and eating and enjoying the evening. But that was in my mind. After that evening, everyone was leaving, cleaning up, taking, because we all brought stuff too, and cleaning up and taking our dishes. And I was one of the last people to leave with a couple other people. And I'm walking out to the car, and I told my one friend who knows this about me, who knows I've had these experiences, I said, something happened tonight. And she said, I noticed that light flickering. And I said, all I know is there was a woman and she was sad, and I don't know what to do with that information. And she said, let Patrice know, call her. So the next morning I did. She was the hostess. I called her. I told her about this. She goes, I know exactly who that was. I know exactly. Then she went on to tell me the circumstances and why it was who it was. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Okay. So that was that. And then, I mean, there's so many more, and I don't want to bore you with all these stories because there's so many other like kind of connections like that. And there was one when my father passed away, and I flew from Oregon to Ohio, and I was staying with my sister and brother-in-law. And that one particular sister, I have 6 sisters. That one sister was executor, and she was in charge, and she had a list of all the things. And I went to the funeral home with her, and we did, made the schedule for the service and picked out what was necessary and did all that stuff. And we come home, we're both exhausted and hungry. And she has a brand new chandelier in her dining room. And the chandelier is beautiful. And one of the bulbs started flickering. And she's like, that shouldn't be happening. This is brand new. That's a brand new light bulb. And why would this, she was like curious. She wasn't angry. She's like, this shouldn't be happening. What's going on? And I immediately felt the presence of my father. I knew it was my father. And I had to tell her, she doesn't know this about me. And I said, let me tell you something. I'm going to tell you something in a lot of things at once, and they're going to be hard to absorb. So I did tell her I have this ability, this spirits visit me and I can't explain it. And go, that's Dad. And here's something that I had no idea about. None, because I lived in Oregon. I had no idea anything what went on with my father, except that he was in an assisted living. And a couple of my sisters who were in charge, made sure, he was at his appointments in time and the bills were paid and grocery, all that. So, and they would keep me in touch with his health and stuff like that. But I didn't know details. This is what happened. I had this vision. It was my father. And I'm like, I could see him looking for his keys and his wallet, and he didn't know where he was. I'm like, what is that about? And I thought, that was weird. And I could feel it and I could see it. And my sister was in the other room, and then she came back in the room. And I said, I got to tell you, Dad he looks lost and he's looking for his keys and his wallet. And she went, oh. I go, what? What's that about? She goes, every single day, he wanted his keys and his wallet by his side. He was obsessed with his keys and his wallet. And she said, I think it was the only last thing he had control of, because he had gone blind years ago and he had lost his health and he was pretty much bedridden. But he wanted his keys and his wallet with him all the time, obsessed with it, would ask for them all day long. I didn't know this. I had no idea this was what was happening. So I didn't know what to surmise, and I don't know what to have thought, except maybe he just didn't make it to where he needed to go. I was naive, and I just started talking to him and said, Dad, look for Mom, look for Ricky, look for people you know. Go, go, you'll be all right. And it's the only thing I knew to say. The light stopped flickering. It stopped. So there was that. And then it flickered the next day, but I won't go into that story, but it stopped because I had a conversation with my father. And then there's so many more of these. I don't know what to tell you. This is my journey. I was being asked in this way to pay attention to the spirit world, that I was being called to do this, but I didn't know what I was doing. I only knew what was happening, what I was feeling, what I was aware of. I was never scared. It didn't bother me. I wasn't making it up because it's not in your head. It's not like a thinking thing. Remember what I said before when I was in Colorado? I was thinking like, that's not what it's about. So as time went on, I could begin to feel more into things. And so I would have different experiences. And one was with a friend of mine who was moving out of state. We'd planned to get together for lunch to say our goodbyes. And we were it was this huge restaurant. I'd never been there before. She picked it. It was this really big restaurant. And we were in the smack middle of the restaurant. It was chilly, so no windows were open, no doors were open, none of that. Part of the decor were hanging live plants, beautiful plants. They were hanging, but they weren't low enough where you'd hit your head, but they were just these pretty plants. We sit down, we're talking, chatting, figuring out what to eat. And I could feel the presence of her grandmother. I just knew it was her grandmother. Don't ask me how, they let me know. And I'm like, oh no, not here. What? What's going on? And so she had to get up and use the restroom. So while she was away, all I said was, if this is really real, if this is really real, if this is real, if you're really here, and I'm not like making up stuff, I want you to make that hanging plant swing. Now I knew it wasn't going to happen. That's why I said that. It was big and heavy, and there were no draft, no one, it was just like, I knew it wasn't going to happen. So I'm like, I'm good. It's not going to happen. Guess what? It happened. That huge hanging plant started going like this. And I'm looking around. There's nobody around. There's no breeze. There's like, oh my God. Okay. So she comes back. She sits down. We're talking. And she does know this about me. So she was very open to it. I mentioned her grandmother. I think I even told her name. And I can't remember the things I said, but there was more evidence there. I could feel a few more things that were real. I'll put it that way, that were evidence. And she was like happy, and it was healing. And she was like singing. She was so happy. And I thought, wow, this experience was really good. This was good for her. So there was that one, and then more in between, and then there was another one, and I can't even tell you. It was when I moved to Oregon, about 2.5, 3 years after I moved here, I thought, well, maybe I should start dating again. I don't know. I wasn't quite into it, but I thought, okay. So you know how you meet people, meet and greet, have coffee, whatever, and met very nice people. I have nothing against them. It's just no connection. Excuse me. So I meet this one gentleman, very, very nice, very intelligent. We had great conversations, very open, very philosophical. And I'm going to take a sip, excuse me. This might go longer than an hour, so please forgive me. I could pick up and finish on Monday. Let's see how we go. Okay, I had to look at the clock. We only dated maybe just a couple months, actually, but there was for a reason. This is the reason. So he was very nice, and his work took him out of town occasionally, so he was gone and back and forth. So this one evening, we went out to dinner, very nice dinner, came back, and we were involved in this great conversation. He was really good. He was just really open and intellectual and really good conversationalist. And my living room light started flashing. Never did it before. and hasn't done it since. Now, I knew that bulb in that lamp was new. And I'm like, oh, gee whiz. Oh, gosh. Oh, no. No. So I'm sitting there and he goes, oh, want me to fix that for you? I went, no, I can tell you why. And here I'm thinking, as soon as I share anything with him, he's going to be out the door. He's going to like get in that fancy sports car and drive home and I'll never see him again. I'm like, oh my gosh, how do I do this? So and it was his mother. Now, I don't know him. I don't know him super well. I don't know about his upbringing. I knew he had a sibling. I knew he had a son and a grandson. I didn't know about his life growing up. I knew nothing. But I knew this was his mother. And I told him, I had to tell him, I go, I know the reason the light is flashing is because, and I explained, I said, and oh gosh, and I'm like spitting out the words. I'm like, this is your mother. And he's like, what? Really? And he was so into it and so happy. And and I thought for sure he was like, beeline to the door, I'm out. But as it went on, I shared what I could with what I knew. He was in tears in a good way. And whatever I said, I can't even tell you because I don't remember much of it. There was an apology, I remember that, but it was very healing for him. It was so healing. And that gave me more insight to this. Like, this is a very healing process. It can bring happiness, it can bring comfort, it can bring a sense of healing. Now, we broke up like about 2 weeks after that, but which was fine. It was mutual, it was good. But I believe that's why our paths crossed. I think that had to happen. I don't think there was anyone else in his life he knew who was mediumistic, you know? That's my feeling anyway. Okay, so other things happened after that, but this is the thing. I had to shut it down. I didn't know what to do, and it was frustrating me. I could feel so much power and energy and personalities, and I just felt so inadequate of how to share what they wanted me to share. I didn't quite know how to connect, if I can say that, to be that conduit. I wasn't really sure I was doing anybody a favor, and it got frustrating to me. So I just said, I stay there. I don't know. I can't. Literally, I shut it down, and they respected that. There was nothing after that. And then I felt bad. I felt like, oh, I miss them. I started missing it. And so here's where the story even gets so much more. I mean, if you don't think there is some type of divine intelligence involved in your life, I'm here to tell you, whether you believe it or not, it's there. I don't care if you're a diehard atheist, it's still there, and I see it in other people. They just don't recognize it. But anyway, so here's another part of this journey. About 11 or 12 years ago, I can't remember how long ago it was, I was at a conference. It was a beautiful, big conference. I can't even remember who was there. There were so many people. But I was drawn to it. I wanted to be there. It was like 3 or 4 days. It was like a long weekend type situation. And I remember learning so much and enjoying a lot of personal growth and inspiration, motivation, learning marketing, a whole bunch of things. It was wonderful. Well, in one of the breaks, it was lunchtime. And you just go sit, you know, I forget where we were. I don't know if we went to another building. I can't remember. I just know that there were a lot of tables with seats of 10, and you just sat where you wanted. And I sat down, and you meet and greet. How are you? Where are you from? What do you do? What brought you here? That kind of thing. You meet a lot of people. And you know what? I got to say, from that conference, I met some awesome people that I still know. And next to me was this woman. Her name was Sandra Champlain. I want you to know that name, Sandra Champlain, Champlain. Hold on to that name. So, we were chatting, having some lunch and chatting, and she was telling me about a book she had just written called We Don't Die. A skeptic's, oh shoot, I'm going to blow it. A skeptic's search for life after death, or something like that. I'm sorry. Oh, Sandra, I'm sorry. I'm blowing that second part. I don't know why it just lost. I got it left my head real quick. But anyway, that's the essence of it. She was telling me that her father had passed away and caused a lot of grief, and what goes on and what happens in the afterlife. Is there an afterlife? She spent years researching. She spent years talking to so many people in so many parts of the world about the afterlife. Talk to mediums, talk to psychics, whoever who would give her the time of day. She talked to them, studied them. There was even scientific research involved. She met people from all over. And then she wrote her book. Her book is We Don't Die by Sandra Champlain. You might want to be interested in it. Chapter 10 is all about grief. If you're going through the process of grief, there's a chapter 10 is on that. So that might be helpful to you. Okay, so I met Sandra. Her book hit the presses, came out, and I kind of, over the years, a little bit here and there, when social media got more and more, a thing, I saw that she was on Facebook, and just kind of, we became friends and just followed her, and her We Don't Die became huge podcast. She said like 500 podcasts on near-death experiences and all kinds of subjects along that line. And another one, there's another, I'm sorry, I forget, but it'll come to me. But there's another podcast she does or is involved in, and she does a lot of interviews. She's so knowledgeable, and she knows so many people. Well, I saw was because I had been following her anyway, but then when COVID hit, I saw that she was a part of this called Sunday Gathering community. I'm like, oh, I wonder what that's about. So I was very curious about it, and they broadcast on Facebook, also over Zoom. So I thought, well, I'll register, because the link was there, registered, and it's on Sunday. And it's kind of like a service. You could say there's always a theme, there's always a topic, and usually spiritual or personal growth or thereof, or the mix of, and always a beautiful topic. And it would start out with cool music, contemporary music that we all know, and that has to do with the topic. And then there'd be an introduction, and someone by the name of Darren would share a prayer, and then someone else would, then a little bit more music, and there'd be the address. Someone would share like 15, 20 minutes and give an address and talk on the topic. And then there was what's called the demonstration. Oh, what's a demonstration? This is where a woman named Carrie McLeod and her husband, Phil Dykes, would be mediums. They're there to be mediums, to connect the spirit world with loved ones. And they used to do it, or they still do it actually, now that COVID's over, we can do things in person. They would do it in their churches. And then because of COVID, the churches were shut down. So they brought it to the internet so people could still have this. And what they would do is they would take turns, but they would bring in somebody and give some evidence, an age, maybe a name, a grandmother. They would say who it was, what they did perhaps. And then if you're in the Zoom audience, you just click your button and raise your hand and go, oh, I recognize that person. And then they would seek out the right person. Had to be the right sitter, otherwise it doesn't work. Because sometimes you'd have 5 people raise their hands and go, oh, I know that person. And then Carrie or Phil would give more evidence to hone down to the right person. And then that's how that works. And then they'd talk. They would just give evidence and talk about the person in the spirit world and give information to the person who raised their hand. We call them, or the sitter, so to speak, or the recipient. And they would just say yes, no, or I don't know. No one wants to know. Don't give, if you're ever in this situation, a medium should not be asking you questions except, do you understand what did that make sense to you? Something like that. And they don't want information. Don't give us information. It's tempting to go, oh yeah, I know, because just say yes or no, or I don't know, or correct, or nope, or whatever you want to do. But that's it. And so when I first saw this, I'm like, oh my gosh, my jaw hit the floor. I'm like, this is amazing. These people are incredible. And then I found out that these Phil and Carrie teach classes. They teach and mentor and train people like me. And I was all over that. I was like, I'm on it. Where do I sign up? And so for over 2 years, I've been training with them and taking classes. And I have to tell you something. I love and adore Phil and Carrie. I don't want to put them on a pedestal. They wouldn't like that. And I don't mean to do that. I don't want to put anybody on a pedestal, but just know they are the most ethical, integral, intelligent, compassionate, caring human beings you could ever know. And also funny as heck. Phil is very funny. And they both were in the corporate world for many years, had high positions. And this is even before that they knew each other, I believe, if I have the timeline right. But they both left their corporate jobs, knowing in their hearts they needed to pursue this aspect of life, the spiritual part of life, and being a medium. And they were taught and trained by the best of the best of the best, who are no longer here, but the best of the best. And so I'm being trained by them, as are so many other people around the world. And the community that I'm in with these people is just incredible. The most wonderful people you'll meet anywhere. I'm not kidding you. I have friends in Ireland, Canada, Scotland, England, Germany, New Zealand, Australia, Luxembourg, Belgium, and all around the country. Just from this community. It's a beautiful community of people. And I have learned so much more, which is why I say I'm a practicing medium. I love practicing. It's not 100%. It's not always 100%. Sometimes they might not show up at all. And it will be for a reason that I can't comprehend or the sitter can't comprehend. And we just have to accept it. I'm telling you, the intelligence on the other side is far greater than what we have. Always. They know so much more and they see more. And you oftentimes won't get the person coming through you hope to come through. Sometimes that works out. Sometimes it'll work out. Let's say you want to hear from your mother. You just really want to hear from your mother and you're concentrating on that. And your mother will come through. But a lot of times someone else will come through. Someone you know. But when they do, you find there's always a reason for it. There's a reason for that person having come through rather than the mother. It's amazing. It's so incredible. Now, since I've been practicing, I find it such an honor and it's such a sacred thing. It's very beautiful and spiritual and it's fun. And every time I bring somebody through when I'm done, like when it's done, I'm like, God, that just happened. It's like, did that really just happen? Because it's like incredible, you know? And I want to share a couple things because I know people who come from religions and backgrounds and beliefs that this is woo-woo, this is evil, this is strange, this is made up, I can tell you it's not. It's none of that. It's as normal as breathing. To me, it's like breathing. It's just normal. The veil, so to speak, is very thin and your loved ones are around and they like it when you talk to them. Ask them for a sign. Ask them to give you a sign. But I'm telling you, there are not enough really good, intelligent, ethical, integral mediums on the planet right now. And I know that's Carrie and Phil's goal, is to bring the ethical, integral, intelligent mediums to the surface, because there aren't enough. There are a lot of scammers out there too, which is upsetting. And there are people who do have the ability, but they never were formally trained. And when I watch them, I go, you're missing half the information, because they weren't trained to go deeper. They weren't trained how to understand what they're seeing and feeling. So they give half a message. And I find that very frustrating. I don't want to criticize anybody, because it's obvious they have the ability and it's strong in them. It's just frustrating when you see it. That reading could have been bigger, better, bolder, stronger. So that's my part in this, that I want to do the best and be the best that I can while practicing mediumship. Now here's the other side. You can't be a medium without being psychic. You have to have very strong psychic abilities, because that is involved in mediumship. But it doesn't mean that everybody with a strong psychic ability practicing being a psychic is a medium, because you don't have to be just because you have strong psychic abilities. But you have to be psychic to be a medium. So with my psychic abilities, I've always sensed them in my lifetime. I always was aware of them. I could always, I don't want to say the word predict, but somehow I could see certain things. I could feel certain things. This is my whole life. And it would happen. And I'd go, oh my gosh, why? And I would be like dumbfounded by it. But I would just toss it up as intuition, It is part of intuition. But intuition is part of being psychic, but being psychic is much deeper and broader than that. But that was very strong in me. When I started coaching and mentoring people, I thought it was normal that I had this ability to see past them and see things about them that they couldn't see. I just thought, oh, everybody can do that. I was wrong. Not everybody can do that. And so honing in my psychic abilities and learning more and being in touch with it, because it's soul to soul. Here it is. Here's what this is. Psychic ability is soul to soul. It's person to person. You're person to person, soul to soul. And reading that person's life through their soul. Number one, always with permission. And when there's a touchy subject come up, ask for permission to go there. That's what I mean by integrity. You don't just blurt out stuff. I don't think that's right. So that's not the way I work anyway. So for me to be with people, helping people and coaching people, mentoring them, coaching them through a situation or just personal growth, which is my expertise. And you'll see that. And I do hope you watch the other videos. Because that's my life's work I'm given to you. So I hope you find it helpful. I really, really do. And I find it very helpful that the psychic ability can be helpful while coaching, but not always necessary. It doesn't always happen. It's only if it's necessary, because a lot of times it doesn't even need to be there. So I'm not someone that goes around psychically reading people. I don't do that. In fact, I shut myself off, so to speak. It's not like I go to the grocery store and I'm standing in line and I'm reading people. I don't do that. I just shut it off, because I need to protect myself, my energy, my own consciousness and being aware of that I'm grocery shopping and I need to get things, just keep my life in order. So I don't do that. And just so you know, because I don't find it ethical at all. No one gave me permission, so no, I don't do that. Can I sense things though? Yes, I can. Just like you can. See, you have abilities too. You probably aren't aware of it, but if you go to someone's house and you're at a gathering, a birthday party or dinner party or whatever, and you meet people you don't know, you haven't met previously. How many of you have met somebody and like, oof, I'm not sure I want to know them? You just kind of get this feeling like, not okay. Because that's your guidance system telling you something. That's saying, you're right. Just be polite. How do you do? Maybe ask a question or two and then step away. You don't need to get to know that person. You sense something not right or untruthful or whatever. And then you see other people where they're really engaging and endearing and funny and humble, and they're just so fun to be around. You want to get to know them. That's a cool situation. That's really fun. And when you meet people like that, it's like when you meet people and you just kind of connect right away. It's really kind of cool. And that's a good thing, because that's your inner guidance system saying, yeah, that's okay. She's cool. He's cool. You want to meet them. So you do have that ability within you, because it's there. We just need to be more keenly aware and more, what's the word I want? Just more astute. Be consciously aware of your inner feelings and your inner guidance system. Not be obsessed with it, but just be aware when it's trying to tell you something. So here's the thing. I wanted to share that story with you because in case anybody else who's listening has this ability and this calling, but they don't know what to do with it, I wanted to let you know about this. You can find out, and Carrie and Phil are probably a couple of the best mediums on this planet, I believe to be. Incredible mediums, incredible. And also completely wonderful human beings. And I'm being taught by the best is how I feel. Not that there aren't other teachers. And I know I haven't been in other classes, so I'm not going to say, oh, they're terrible. I'm not going to do that because I don't know. I just know for me, if you want to know more, you can get in touch with them. Their website is mymediumship.com. And you can read all about it, see the classes, read about who they are, all that kind of stuff. And Sandra Champlain on Facebook, if you go to We Don't Die or We Don't Die Radio, or even her name, if you're interested in knowing more about her work, she's available. Oh, YouTube, We Don't Die. Look her up. You can find so many episodes of her podcast. So that's another way to be informed and learn. There's nothing scary or woo-woo or weird. Hollywood, that's about. It's not. It can feel scary if you don't know. Someone's just trying to get your attention for a reason. And believe it or not, there are real pranksters. If someone was a prankster in life, they're going to be a prankster in the afterlife. Seriously. I think of George Clooney, and I'm thinking when he passes, God forbid when, but I'm not putting him there. He is going to do pranks because that's what he does here. He's going to do them, and I'm expecting it. I mean, I won't know about it, but I'm expecting it. Anyway, last thing I want to say is let me put it this way. It doesn't matter what you believe. You are on your spiritual journey. I don't care if you're Christian, Jewish, Hindu, excuse me, Buddhist, doesn't matter, or atheist. You can be an atheist, which is still a belief, but you're an atheist. You don't believe in anything or the afterlife or there's spirits or souls or anything. See, it doesn't matter what you believe. That's your journey right now. But I can guarantee you, you will be on the other side. I can guarantee you, you are of spiritual DNA. I can guarantee you that you have a soul. You don't have to believe it, or you can believe different things about it, doctrines or whatever people want you to believe. It doesn't matter. Believe what you want to believe. But when your body goes, you don't die. You go on. You go on. There is a life review. There are changes. There's amendments, making amends to be made. There's things that go on the other side. It might not be what you've been taught, and that might scare you. I don't want you to be scared. It's not about being scared. It's just about understanding. It doesn't matter what you believe. Believe it. If you're growing spiritually, if your life is all the better for it, you do you. I'm not telling you what to believe as far as your faith. I'm just letting you know that no matter what your faith is, you will be on the other side. You will. And I want you to look me up if I'm there. Let's have a laugh if you didn't believe it. I've brought in people. Let me tell you that. Oh, I know I'm going long, but I just really, oh gosh. Okay, let me finish with this. I've brought in people. I brought in atheists. I brought in diehard Christians who thought this was evil. I brought in people who were kind of whatever. And they would mention it. They would say, can you believe we're communicating this way? One guy said, you know me, I never would have believed this. This is BS. This was nothing. I didn't even have a faith. I believed in nothing. And then I had a woman who was very faithful. Her Bible was important to her. Her love, her faith was important. She had a lovely life here. She was intelligent. I remember she loved her family dearly. And I just remember parts of her that were just beautiful. She's a beautiful person. But she said to her granddaughter, who was an adult, who was receiving this message. And I said, I'm like, oh, I feel like I'm holding a Bible to my chest. Your grandmother was a very faithful person. Her faith meant a lot to her. So, oh yeah, she sure did. And as soon as I said that, I started chuckling because the grandmother started chuckling. And she made it known. She goes, can you believe here I am communicating this way when I condemned it when I was alive? What can I say? These are my experiences. This is what I know to be true. And thank you for listening. Please, if you have any questions, email me. I'm easy to get a hold of. I don't even have a fancy email. I told you, I'm not fancy. I don't have fancy lights. I don't have fancy music. I don't have blah, 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 fancy camera. This is just me in my living room, sharing with you what I know, the best way I know how. I'm a one-woman show. I'll put it that way. It's just me. So anyway, you can contact me at info.maryalice, MARYALICE, one word, info.maryalice22@gmail.com. If you want to work with me, if you have questions, you can contact me there. Thank you. I appreciate your time. And I do hope this has been helpful and educational. And I need my glasses on, sorry, so I can see what I'm doing. And just know that this process of mediumship is very healing to people. It's sacred and healing and comforting. And like I said earlier, I brought in a lot of apologies, which is very healing. So I will keep it there. Thank you very much, and I'll see you Monday.